Hello, this is Jay Rosenthal and Krista and Jeremy. We are live at Planet 13 for Cultivated Live. We have a great guest, and there's actually something fun happening at the same time as this guest is coming on. Diane Eberlein, you're with Source,
Yep.
but also the Cannabis Beverages Association. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It doesn't happen a lot, or maybe ever, but we're going to talk about cannabis beverages while cannabis beverages are being canned across the way. It's pretty... I like how you organize that.
It's mesmerizing to watch a canning line.
Yes.
I think everyone should have a moment and take it in.
It's really something, and this is not a massive one because I think it's their show kitchen, but they really do. Yesterday they were making gummies by the bucket
there's a
full.
bunch of gummies sitting right there, and they look great.
They do look great. When they sift the sugar, I like that a lot. Talk a little bit about Source first, and then we'll talk about we'll zoom out and talk cannabis beverages.
Source does water-soluble emulsion technology. Okay. We entered the space primarily in beverage in Washington State, which is known for their high-dose, small formats, 100-milligram, 2-ounce shots. We're known for our superior flavor profile and also the scalability. We've been able to bring can to all of their markets in the cannabis space, as well as help them expand into their hemp D9, which has caused quite the boom in beverage this year. So we're excited about beverage, but we also work in any CPG, anything that can be processed where you can infuse water, whether it's liquid or powder. We can work with that. So we work with gummies and edibles and everything. But I'm really personally passionate about beverage. It's the only way I consume cannabis. And I think most of the people at our company entered this space because we had a passion for beverage in particular.
I like it.
Yeah.
What were you do? This is the question Jeremy always asks, but what were you doing before this?
Not cannabis.
Okay.
I never consumed cannabis until I was in my 30s and I moved to Seattle, obviously one of the first legal markets. I was a dare baby that totally believed the gateway drug scenario that they fed us, and when I got to Seattle, everyone was consuming cannabis. I worked in entertainment marketing before. There were definitely other drugs in entertainment marketing that you see people consuming. I didn't touch those either. Got to Seattle.
Because they weren't in beverage form.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at the psychedelics. That's the next wave, right? But when I got to Seattle, I noticed everyone was consuming cannabis. And I was like, there's got to be something to this. There's people having very successful lives, doctors, lawyers, parents, and I thought there must be something to this. So I started dabbling. I've always considered myself kind of a human guinea pig, willing to try things, sometimes more than I should, to figure out if it's right for me. I got lucky, got a really good bud tender one day that said, "What are you trying to achieve?" And I don't even think I knew the answer to that question, but he saw that I was in there every other week picking up low dose stuff, and that's all I knew is that low dose was my game. And he's like, "You should try this drink mixer." And that was 8 years ago, definitely before the wave of beverage we're seeing now. And it was the only thing that worked for me. It was able to kind of curb my anxiety, and I microdose throughout the day now. And I was like, my friends don't know about this. And if they knew about this, this would be their avenue of consumption. This is the future of cannabis consumption as far as I'm concerned. But they're not going to buy it at the existing retail the way it existed especially in Seattle, which definitely still had that grunge punk rock feel. It's a great market, don't get me wrong, but it definitely has a certain aesthetic, especially in downtown. And I was like, my parents are never walking into one of these shops, but my mom could benefit from this. So I entered the space and started helping brands with marketing and creating experiences where people could try these products. Ended up meeting the CEO of Source, and I was telling him about the product that I really liked. He's like, "It's powered by us." He's like, "That's my product." And it was kind of before the drink mixers were really something people were aware existed. And so I started working for Source back 5 years ago now, and now chair of the Cannabis Beverages Association, because I want to bring more awareness to the category. It's definitely a category that isn't top of mind for people when they walk into a dispensary or even think about cannabis. So our goal is to bring awareness to the category and put these great products, and the ones we talked about that taste so good, in front of consumers so that they know this is an option.
Yeah.
When you think about retail environments, because you're at this really interesting intersection of having brand, having product, and then you have all of these retail relationships to essentially support that. When talking with retailers and thinking about the presence of the category, what are some of the core things that you address with maybe an inventory buyer or somebody who's deciding to bring beverages in to fulfill some level of their assortment?
There's so many things that make beverage a little bit more difficult to sell in the shop. One is these stores were not necessarily laid out for room for refrigerators. So oftentimes the most approachable category for consumption for a newbie in cannabis is tucked away in the back of the store and the least approachable physically. So a lot of times we talk to retailers about how to make the beverage more top of mind for the bud tender to promote, but also just something they can touch, feel, see the label. Having those refrigerators at point of sale. I mean, we've all seen traditional retail. Bed Bath & Beyond has beverages at checkout, and it's because it's an easy add-on. So there's an opportunity for bud tenders to add a beverage or two very quickly to their average cart size by having it right there next to checkout. There's also obviously an education factor. A lot of people don't understand that the experience of beverage is very different than a gummy or another method in terms of the onset time. They don't really, I think there are some consumers that assume it's a one and done, kind of like you pop a gummy and you wait it out. This is something you're sipping on. You're sometimes building your high. It's a sessionable. It can be sessionable. So I think there's a lot of different components to it, but I think the main thing is actually making sure that the beverage aren't tucked away in the back and making them something that the consumer can actually ask a question about because they're right there.
It's interesting that we were talking to Theory Wellness, so East Coast dispensary operator, but a lot of stores and very successful ones. They're building a new facility where they have 2 doors. So basically 2 different facilities, same location. One is like a liquor store setup that's just going to have beverages.
Beverages only, yeah.
Beverages only. So it's not a dispensary operation. Well,
it's a dispensary operation.
That's just beverages.
With a focus on beverages.
And the other one is the traditional dispensary operation, right? Because they have seen in their own data that there are people that just want beverages, like you, but also the experience can be daunting to go, especially in Massachusetts, where it's like walking into a prison to go buy weed. But the way they're thinking about it is like, are there ways to actually almost create a different experience for consumers?
And it's true because our target consumer, where we're going to see the growth from cannabis beverages, is not necessarily the existing cannabis consumer. It's more mainstream, people looking to replace beer, wine, alcohol, things like that. So creating an atmosphere that resembles that and makes them feel comfortable is definitely preferred. Obviously, our goal would be in the future to have these low-dose beverages sitting next to seltzers, Bud Lights, like we're seeing in Minnesota.
Right.
Which is, again, no one saw Minnesota coming in as the pioneer in cannabis beverages, but we'll take it. And we're seeing that traction pick up as a result of it being placed where our target consumer goes on a regular basis.
I think at the beginning you talked about nano emulsion technology. Dumb it down for me. So what is that and why is it challenging to make a cannabis beverage tasty?
So, I mean, it really shouldn't be challenging if you're working with the right emulsion. Emulsion technology is essentially, it's not new to beverage. They use this with flavors, they've used it with terpenes, they use it with hops. So this is not new in beverage by any sense of the word. It's new to cannabis, and this is obviously a new consumption method for cannabis. So I think it's gotten a lot of attention as a result. The way we apply our technology, though, is different because the active ingredient being cannabis, THC, CBD, the minors, they all react differently, and cannabis has proven to be trickier due to the flavor profile and the fact that this is an intoxicating, functional ingredient. So the dosage is more important with this particular product than vitamin B because it's not going to give you any sort of intoxicating feeling. So what we do is we break down the distillate into tiny little particles, and you enrobe it in material that disguises the body and makes your body, when it's digesting it, see it as water. That means it doesn't have to go through the liver to essentially be emulsified there, which would delay the onset time, which is why gummies and other distillates take longer, and the onset time can be between an hour, 30 minutes. With ours, because it's being digested in the intestinal tract instead of going through that process, it's between 10 and 15 minutes. So similar to alcohol, if you're sipping a beer, that's the experience you're having here. I mean, yes, you could shoot the beverage and have all of that experience in 10 to 15 minutes and have it last about an hour and 30 minutes. But if you're building your high, drinking a low-dose beverage, making it sessionable like beer, you're having a very similar experience. I think one of the biggest differences that I don't think gets talked about nearly as much is there's a consumer behavioral difference in terms of how people drink cannabis versus drinking alcohol. When you get to the high where you feel good, you don't crave more the way you do with alcohol. Like, you know how it is when you're at a bar or a party and you're drinking and your drink's empty and you're like, I need another one. You get into this cyclical idea like, oh, I need another one, because you're constantly chasing that good feeling. You probably had it 2 drinks and now you're just going down that downward spiral, but you're still thinking you can get back there.
Never done that.
Not this week.
Yeah.
But with cannabis beverages, you kind of get to that high and you don't crave to be higher. you learn your tolerance, you kind of understand where you are, and then you sip on Diet Coke or seltzer or mocktail and you enjoy yourself. So it's different, but it is, and I think that's one of the things that consumers, when they go, if they're not familiar with cannabis and they're going to a dispensary for the first time, they don't even know that a gummy or a beverage is going to have a different experience, a different onset time. They kind of assume and edibles are all the same. And that's one thing when we talked about education at the retail level, that's something really important, that whole story needs to be told. Not just it hits quick, it needs to say, hey, this is something that's more consistent. It's going to hit within 10 to 15 minutes, but the offset is also between hour 15, hour 30. But just like all things, learn your tolerance. When you go off to college, your parents are like, learn your tolerance.
Yeah,
Don't
right.
be the first kid to throw up from, learning that you can't drink the whole bottle of Bacardi. This is, just like anything else. We want to teach people how to consume these products and enjoy them. Start slow and low, just like you would with anything else.
Can we zoom out a little bit to
Yeah.
talk about technology, talk about source, but talk about the Cannabis Beverage Association? Like, talk about what that is, what the structure is, and sort of who's involved and sort of some of the goals.
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit, 100% volunteer-based. We represent all cannabis beverages. So whether it's CBD, hemp D9, any of the minors, THC, we represent the entire category. So our goals are to raise awareness for cannabis beverages, because it wasn't too long ago that I had to tell people what a cannabis beverage was, just by definition. Right. Now, because of Minnesota and hemp D9, they're definitely, the category awareness is up, so I don't have to answer that question as much. But that's one of our big focal points, is making sure people understand that this category not only exists, but the differences between consuming a beverage versus maybe some of the other methods out there. The other thing we focus on is regulatory and standards. We want to see these products, particularly the low-dose beverages, regulated similarly to alcohol. We would like the TTB to regulate. They regulate alcohol and tobacco. We would like to see the TTB regulate these intoxicating cannabinoids, because they deserve to be represented in the same place as alcohol. And that's often what we're promoting them as alternatives to alcohol. So we're working on template regulations. We work on standards for testing, so labs actually know how to work with these products and understand and one of the things that you actually touched on, I'm going to go back to this a little bit. The reason that it's important to have emulsion technology that's stable and good in beverage is some of these are sitting on shelves for a couple weeks, right? When you have an intoxicating cannabinoid, you need to know that first sip of that beverage is going to give you the same dose as that last sip. So with our technology, it's homogeneous all the way through. So that means if that can is 10 milligrams, each sip is going to give you the same equal dose all the way through to the bottom. So you know that you're getting exactly what's on that can. You're not getting 5 milligrams of it. It's not scalping to the side of the can. It's not settling to the bottom. You're not getting it all in that first sip, which with an unstable emulsion, that is what happens. You would have scalping, sticking to the can or floating to the top or going to the bottom. Emulsion technology is much, much better now than I think 10 years ago when beverages first started kind of hitting the market. And now we have not only great tasting products, but products that deliver a consistent experience. And that's what the consumer is really looking for, because you're not going and buying a Diet Coke at a store and it tastes different, or it's really sweet at the top, not sweet at the bottom. People are used to having consistency in food and beverage, and that's what we're delivering with these products.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. But what Krista always tells me is that it is perhaps the best way and most visible way, and it's cold, like it comes in a different form for retailers to top up that cart, cross-sell. It's juicy. And when we saw it in Canada, when they started putting the fridge in there, the numbers proved it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that's really interesting with beverages specifically is that the packaging format has such good physical visibility. Yes. And it's in a familiar format of somebody in the way that they purchase, like it's either in a bottle or it's in a can, for example, or glass bottle even. And with all of those functions, it feels familiar to where else you would purchase products elsewhere.
Exactly.
Whereas, how many other environments do you purchase, like
Yeah.
A Mylar bag of
Right.
something.
Mhm.
Not a lot.
Not that many.
Honestly. Yeah, so even in the familiarity of what product purchasing looks like,
Yeah.
it shows up.
They
separately.
understand that, you know, for the most part, a can is typically a single serving size. They understand. What we do need to educate on, though, is, and this is probably not as much of a focus in Canada because of your dosing caps, but when you go to Seattle, Washington, most of the beverages in those cabinets are 100 milligrams, sometimes in 2-ounce shots. The top 20 SKUs there are 100 milligram SKUs. There aren't a lot of low dose options. So the consumer, if they're looking at a fridge, they might think you start at 100 milligrams because they don't know what that means. They know milligrams from Advil.
Right.
And they look at Celsius as
Right.
200 milligrams of caffeine. So 100 milligrams, they're like, yeah, okay. If they don't know cannabis, they don't know that that's a high dose. So that's something you have to also kind of explain. And I think that's also why it's important to fill that fridge with a variety of products, not just a couple brands. Beverages sell better next to other beverages, but it has to tell the story, and you have to make it a little bit clear that, maybe it's like the fridge starts with low dose and kind of builds to the higher dose products, just to make it a little bit, again, more approachable for the consumer. Because it is a familiar format, but it's not necessarily a familiar active ingredient.
Right. Well, I love talking about cannabis beverages. I could do it all day, but I can already see people be mad at us.
We're lining them up.
They want to hear about it too, and the people online are as well. But I really appreciate you coming by for sharing the source story, but also the Cannabis Beverage Association.
Yeah.
Do you know the website off the top of your head, or how people can get in touch with you?
Yes.
Other than LinkedIn, which you are there.
Lucky for us, it's cannabisbeverageassociation.com, so it couldn't be easier for you guys to find. And yeah, we're definitely always looking for support, but also other associations that we can align with just in terms of quality standards, things like that. So we're definitely looking for partnerships in that area.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to it when we, not only right now on the stream, but when we post this afterwards as well. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me, guys. This is great.
I'm glad we could. That was Diana Eberlein from Source and from the Cannabis Beverage Association. We'll be right back with David Schweedy from Heritage Cannabis, from Planet 13 and Cultivated Live. We'll be right back.
Awesome.